Well, welcome everybody to our travel talk. I am John Werner, the president of MAST Travel Network, and we represent a network of just about 1,000 travel advisors and specializing in trips all over the world. And we have with us today one of our travel advisors, Jennifer Walker, who had recently traveled to countries that have opened up during this pandemic, Mexico and Jamaica specifically. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thanks.
So I know that you traveled to both countries a couple weeks apart, I suppose, from one or the other. So what was it like flying out of, well, one trip I believe you said you flew from Bloomington, Illinois, and the other trip out of Peoria, Illinois. So what was it like at those airports?
I actually like traveling out of the regional airports because it is smooth. there's no long lines, there's no impatient clients and people in the terminal. The TSA agents are friendly, so I prefer it. It's a smooth process.
Very easy. So no hassles at all. Did you notice anything really that different from before?
There was a little bit of a flub. I have pre-check, so I should not have had to take off shoes or pull out big electronics. But both airports, for whatever reason, I still had to do that. I think at one airport, it might have just been someone in training didn't realize that I was pre-checked. But, it's not like you have people stacked behind you where it's a rush to get through TSA. So it's not a big deal. But that was kind of a hassle. And then before you got on the plane, you scanned your own boarding pass. So they try to handle your documents and your luggage as little as possible. The other thing that was different is if you had snacks in your bag, they had to come out. Really? You have all these prepackaged little chips and stuff like that. Right. All of that had to come out.
Oh, well, that's interesting because a lot of people would be traveling with snacks like that nowadays with the airlines not serving.
Put in a big baggie, so it's easy to carry there.
That sounds like good advice to just have it all contained so it's easy. But so then what was the scene like at at the gate? Really not that many people around, or what?
No, there's not that many people. They handled it a little bit differently. On one flight, I was on American Airlines. The other trip, I was on Delta Airlines. And they did things very similarly, where they would not allow groups to approach the counter. So there was no crowding to board. And both airlines boarded from the back of the plane to the front of the plane, which is different. So you really had to pay attention to the announcements on when it was your time to go. And then there again, you scanned your own boarding pass to get onto the plane. They tried to handle your paperwork as little as possible. And then when you boarded the plane, you were handed a small bag that had a little, like a very small bottle of water and hand sanitizer, hand wipe, and a snack, like a little graham cracker, chips, that kind of stuff. And that was given to all of the passengers. But then if you were in the front row, you might get beverage service if you were in the higher paying seats.
Okay, yeah. So then you had to change planes somewhere. The connections went smoothly?
They did. It was on American, of course, we went through Dallas on the way down, and I had never seen that airport with so few people. It was really strange. Very quiet in the terminals. In Atlanta, same thing, very few people traveling. It was kind of a nice experience. I liked it because you didn't have an overfull plane and no crowds in the airports. I liked it. I could get spoiled by that.
Well, sure. It's it makes it easy to get through. Yeah.
Really, the disappointing thing was is if there were certain restaurants or something you were looking forward to experiencing in the terminals, not all of the restaurants and shopping venues were open in the major airports. So that was a little bit different.
Yeah. So then on arrival, let's just go with Cancun first. On arrival in Cancun, what was that experience like?
No change. They handed out the customs forms before you left the plane. There was someone at the end of the gate that was making sure that you had your paperwork filled out, and then you went through the lines at immigrations and customs the same way you always did. There was no change arriving into Cancun. There was one area where you walked by a thermal thermometer, but they never stopped you. You just kept walking on by. That was really the only thing I saw different on arrival into Cancun.
Okay. And how about in Montego Bay, Jamaica?
Oh, Montego Bay was chaos. They had just reopened and were constantly, almost on a daily basis, changing the protocols for arrival. And so even though my son and I had proactively done COVID testing here at home and had our proof that we were negative, we still had to go through all of the health assessments, got tested again. It was cumbersome, and it was confusing even to the people that were at the tables because the procedures were changing so rapidly. It was not an easy process, but it also didn't take as long as I expected. So from the time we got off the plane until we got to our transfer vehicle was less than an hour. So it really didn't impact us too much because there were only a couple of planes arriving at that time.
That's not too bad there.
No, not bad at all, but it was confusing.
Yeah.
It was not knowing where to go, and you get your temperature check here, and then you go to this table and answer questions here, and then you go over here and do this. It was just a little bit.
Yeah, from what I've read recently, I know that they kept changing things, but it seems like they're to the point where they figured it out now, how they're going to handle this. So
I hope so. The only challenge now is trying to get the test done ahead of time at an appropriate lab that they'll accept the results from. A little bit of more hurdles to get into Jamaica, but once you get there, it's still the beautiful destination it always has been.
Did you use Club Bay at Montego Bay?
I do every time I fly in and out of there, and I was glad that I had someone because she understood the procedures better. Yeah. It's not that we were fast-tracked like you would expect with Club Bay service, but it was nice, at the end of that long hallway that you come down, there was someone to greet you with your name on a sign, and she led you from point to point, that she knew where she was going, which was good because I wouldn't have been able to figure it out. So I felt it was well worth it, and under normal circumstances, it's certainly worth it because you fast track through that immigration line, and then on the outbound, you fast track through customs and get up to your gate and enjoy the lounge.
Well, it sounds like you always recommend that to anybody you're sending to Jamaica. How much does that cost, by the way?
If you do both the arrival and departure bundle, it's $80 per person.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not bad when you consider how much you can pay for food in the terminal. Like my son wants Wendy's hamburger. That'll cost you $20 right there. So when you consider the service you're getting and the free food and drinks and the lounge before you depart, it's worth it.
It's worth it, for sure. So when you in both destinations, after you retrieved your luggage, did you what was the transportation like? Was it just the two of you in the vehicle, or did they fill it up with other people?
I actually prefer to do private transfers all the time for my family because I've gotten tired of being put on a motor coach full of people where we're waiting on multiple planes to arrive and people to get through, all the procedures and then stopping at different resorts. So to me, that's not something I want to deal with every time I arrive into a destination. So I did pay for private transfers. So of course we had a luxury vehicle, like a Cadillac Escalade, all to ourselves. It was very easy to find the transfer drivers with signage that, they're always holding up signs with your names looking for you. So it was not hard to find them. One thing that was a little bit different is they tried to handle our luggage as little as possible, which actually surprised me. So, I was wheeling my big check bag down the sidewalk, and then once we got to the vehicle, they actually disinfected the handles and everything before they picked it up and loaded it into the vehicle. And then on the vehicle, of course, the vehicles were spotless. But you had to wear your masks when you're in the vehicle. You could not take your mask off, and the driver did not really interact with us like they normally do. You know, little questions here and there, but for the most part, it was not what we normally experience, but it still was very worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I felt more comfortable having private transfers instead of being put on a vehicle with a lot of other people.
Sure. Yeah, and the drivers were wearing their masks too, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
that cuts down on the willingness to be talking, you know.
I don't quite understand that, why they can't interact with you, but that's just, it was the same way in both destinations. So it's just something that the tour folks that operate the transfers, that just must be something that they're implementing.
Yeah. Usually, when I've been there, they're very eager to take your luggage and very courteous about all of that, and so yeah,
a little bit different, but they're doing what they're supposed to do, so that's okay.
So when you arrived at the resorts and you stepped off to the vehicles, what was your first impression?
Well, in Jamaica, my first impression was this place is beautiful and there's no one here. So you walked in the door, they were very kind to greet you. In fact, the sales manager knew I was coming in, so I had a personal greeting from her, which was really nice. And they spent a lot of time educating us on what's different. This time around, you got to make a reservation for dinner, and here's how you do that. And we need you to download the app for the resort because that's how we're communicating.
Okay.
So they spent more time with us on check-in, explaining the differences and the expectations. So that was a little bit different. And then the exact opposite happened at the Rio Palace Peninsula in Cancun. That was mass chaos. Yeah. It was a rainy day, and you had all these guests checking in, checking out, and then the entertainment crew had brought in ping pong and cornhole games because it was raining outside. So you had 50 people in the lobby, and then you're trying to talk with the check-in gals who are behind plexiglass, so you got all this noise, and it was just kind of chaotic. But again, they tried to really take the time to explain to you, make sure you had the app downloaded for the property, because that's what they were using to communicate requests for room service and to set up dining reservations. So they did spend more time explaining what services were available or not available, and what you should expect, which I thought was good.
I know the Rio Palace the Rio Palace Peninsula is a big hotel and has a very distinct architecture because the center, you can fly an airplane through that center. It's so huge, and
you can't miss it, can you? Right.
So, it is cavernous. So I can imagine the sound ramps up when people can't be outside and stay out.
Right, it does, but it's a beautiful property, and even though it's a high-rise structure, which doesn't appeal to everybody, the grounds were beautiful. It's not so big that you can't easily get from place to place in just a matter of minutes. So it's a very nice property to stay at in Cancun.
Yeah, they offer a lot there, and so it appeals to a lot of people because there's a lot to do and use, and
we enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's bright purple and pink lobs and all that kind of stuff.
Don't go there for the decor. It's not going to appeal to a Midwesterner, but if you just want clean and comfortable and a good value, it's a great place. We had no complaints about that.
Did you notice any difference in the in-room amenities? Are they still providing what they've always provided, or they've taken some things out?
Well, I mean, it was different between, in Jamaica, I stayed at the Hyatt Ziva Rose Hall. There, they were doing room service, and you could get the minibar replenished, but they were not coming into your room. So you would put in a request for what you needed, and then they would deliver it to your door, knock on your door, and it was sitting on basically a one-step stool. And they stayed there until you got your items, and then you close the door. So, and then the same thing with housekeeping at the Hyatt. when you checked in, you marked whether you wanted daily housekeeping service or not. And I marked no because it's just me and my son, so we don't go through a bunch of towels and need our beds made. So you had those options at the Hyatt. Now at the Riu Palace Peninsula in Cancun, they were not offering room service at all during this stay. So that was different. There they were still doing minibar service. Whether you hung the do not disturb sign or not, we still got the room attended to, and of course we got the cute little cow animals every day. So we liked our house attendant, but both properties were different, and it changes depending on what policies and procedures are implemented by the manager of that property.
Sure.
I toured other Riu in Cancun, and some of them were doing room service. Our particular property was not, and that was a manager decision.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the Riu Palace Peninsula, what was your favorite restaurant there, and how about your favorite dish?
Well, truthfully, at Riu Palace, we were thrilled because the buffet was open. My family loves the buffet because it's so quick and easy and for variety. And if I can get the omelet station to make my scrambled eggs the way I want them, and they're perfect, you score highs. And they did really well there. So we didn't do any of the specialty restaurants at the Riu, even though everything was open.
Yeah. Okay. I know at the Hyatt Ziva Rose Hall, it is definitely a great resort for families.
Yeah.
But who else would you say would love that resort?
It'd be perfect for groups and destination weddings because they had some beautiful gazebos near the water, and then there was a huge courtyard that you could have a pretty reception at, and they had a conference center, so if do a wedding and reception indoors if you chose. And right next door to it was an adults only Hyatt Zlara. So the guests of the Zlara have full access to Ziva. So if you're doing maybe a multi-generational group or a destination wedding and some of the people want to stay on the adults only side and other people need the family friendly, it's just a phenomenal property. And the beach was beautiful. They've got berms that protect from waves and seaweed. Great for kids. Just all around a stunning property.
Yeah, I could see.
Which is even better.
Yeah, I could see that being perfect for destination weddings when you have the two sides. You've got the adults only side. And
you've got the white sand and the turquoise water. That's what people are looking for. And it was seaweed free. Very pretty.
Well, they must have a lot of like kids-friendly restaurants too at the Hyatt Ziva. I know they have a jerk shack for jerk chicken and pork, and I believe there's a English-style pub offering fish and chips and burgers and again kids' favorite foods, I should say. So.
Yeah, The only challenge at the Hyatt this time, John, was that only 2 a la carte restaurants were open each night. And you had to make reservations, which is not the norm. So during our stay, we really enjoyed the Italian, Di Rosa, because they do homemade pasta. And the fettuccine Alfredo was fantastic. So I highly recommended that. The pub was open, but they were not serving food. So you could go in there, watch TVs, for your sports and get a drink, but they were not serving food. So you couldn't get the kid-friendly options. But you had room service available to you. You had 2 a la cartes each night. The buffet was only open in the morning for breakfast and then one night during our stay. So it was a little bit different. You could still get kid-friendly things on the room service menu or over at Calypso. And, of course, the jerk hut. We were there every day.
Yeah. Is that at the beach?
Well, it's between the beach and the pool. So it's centrally located. And the guy that was working the station, I think his name was Shannon or Shane or something. I don't recall, but he was hilarious and very friendly. He was your typical Jamaican, big smile, big booming voice. He was a lot of fun. So we'd come by and he's like, "You want your usual?" Yeah.
Oh, that's good. He was a good memory then.
Yeah.
Um, how about the spa services? Eddie, did you take advantage of the spa at either property?
Well, of course, I have to test that out.
Yes.
Yeah, I did go to the spa at the Hyatt and got a massage. And I also was able to do a tour of the spa, which you can't always do. And I specifically asked them what services they could do and what they couldn't. And they said that that's dictated actually by the CDC. And so they weren't able to do anything around the face or mouth. So if you had a bride who was coming in, they had this beautiful, huge room for the bride and her party to get ready, but they couldn't apply the makeup. They could do her hair, but they couldn't do the makeup. They weren't, so really anything involving the face was not on their list of services. And then I did not do a spa treatment over at the Ryu, but it looked beautiful as well.
Was it? Yeah. So if you wanted a typical like Swedish massage or something,
you can get that both properties very easily. The Hyatt did not have like the hydrotherapy and the sauna. Those things where there might be multiple people coming in, those were not functioning or open, whereas they were at the Ryu. So it's different destinations have some different policies and procedures.
Yeah, sure. I know the staff at the hotels are required to wear face masks. What did you observe as far as the guests doing?
At both properties, the guests were very respectful. If they were near or going to pass by someone on the sidewalk, if you walk through the lobby or a big common area like a restaurant, you wore your mask unless you were at your table. So the guests were being very respectful of one another. All the staff definitely had the masks on. The one thing I noticed different at the Hyatt is that someone was going around every day, and they had these beautiful outdoor seating areas with fire pits near the outdoor bars and where the restaurants and stuff are. And they were actually spraying down those seats in all those areas every day, several times a day, even if they had been sitting in them. So they were constantly going around, and you'd see someone with a rag and sanitizer on the door handles. The Hyatt was just really did a phenomenal job. And we did see cleaning and stuff going on at the Ryu property. The guests, there were more guests, more American guests, and I can say that there were some misbehaving guests in the swim up pool area.
Oh, yeah, right.
We're not practicing social distancing or wearing masks.
Yes.
But for the most part, the guests were very respectful and wore masks when they were around other guests.
Well, that's good to hear. And it sounds like the hotels are generally doing a really good job.
Their staff is doing an excellent job. Both properties, can't complain about that.
Oh, neat. So did you go off property at all? I know when you were in Cancun, you did go visit some of the other Ryu properties. Besides visiting some of the other hotels, did you go elsewhere around the resort area?
Well, in Jamaica, we were not allowed to. You had to stay on your property.
Yeah, they kind of have a bubble.
You know, whether they had done a COVID test or not, they just were not allowing tours at that time, which I heard on the Jamaica tourism call today that they have reopened the tours as of today. So we did not leave the property other than for the airport transfers in Jamaica. But in Cancun, my son and I did a combo tour where we did ATVs and jet skis. So everything in Mexico was open except for the ecological sites like Tulum, Chichen Itza, Coba. Some of the, you couldn't go to those sites. Okay. But as far as the standard tours, they were all open. The only thing that the tour operators cautioned us on was they're not operating as many times a day or every day. So one tip is to either prearrange the tour before you get into the destination or immediately upon arrival. You're always asked to meet with your on-site rep, meet with them, get your tour booked early in the trip. That way, if there's something you have your heart set on doing, you've got it booked. You're not going to miss out and go home disappointed, especially the kids.
That's good advice. So it sounds like the eco parks like Xcaret or Explore, they were all open. And
they're still open, surprisingly so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Um, what was your most Instagrammable moment in each of these destinations?
Well, Cancun, it's definitely the jet ski ride. You can probably see it behind me.
Oh, yes, I.
Yeah. You put me behind the wheel of an ATV or a jet ski, and I turn into a wild woman. My son says I have tried to kill him, but he's alive. But that was probably the Instagrammable moment from the Cancun trip. And Jamaica is, we had a really nice. The lobby is like 2 floors up because it's kind of sloped. It's a unique property. So we had all of the background of the pools and the ocean with all those different colors of blue behind my son and I. We did a selfie before we left. So I would say that was my Instagram worthy photo there.
So the property's built on a hillside, sort of.
Well, you don't notice it though, because the property, like the sidewalks and stuff that you walk on are level, but the main building is 2 stories at least, and that goes level over to the conference center and the building, blocks where the rooms are. But then down below the lobby are other restaurants and where the pools are. So even though you don't notice a slope, it's just how it's built. So the lobby's up higher than where you would normally expect it to be. So it's not bad. I mean, I'm surprised at how level it was. So it'd be great for someone that was in a wheelchair to easily get around. All the buildings had elevators.
So fully accessible.
You got to get into the pool. They didn't have a setup that I saw for a wheelchair accessible pool. Really nice property. Even
it wasn't a zero depth, not a zero depth pool either to get into.
I did not notice one at the Hyatt. There definitely was one at the Ryu.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So then describe the experience returning home from these destinations and the fact that the 2 trips were about 2 weeks apart, perhaps. And so things are so changeable in this environment. Did you notice that the trips back home had changed from, 1 week to 2 weeks later?
From Cancun, I would say no. One tip that I would recommend is, those little bottles of water that the attendants give you when you get on the plane. If you're coming back, that is too big to go back through TSA security. So it'll make you open up your entire bag for that little bottle of water. So either drink it, pitch it, or put it in your check bag before you recheck that bag and go through security and onto your gate. So there was nothing unusual when we left Jamaica. We didn't have to quarantine when we came home. Now, Cancun was a little bit different. And I knew that they wanted you to fill out a health questionnaire. And I had done that ahead of time. I printed it out. I had it in my hot little hands. But the airline, when we checked in for the return flight in Montego Bay, they insisted that we download that form again so that it had that day's date.
Oh.
And the Wi-Fi in the airport was not the greatest. And so it was kind of a challenge to get all 3 of us at that time a form for each of us completed before we could go through security. And security was checking your phones to make sure that you had completed it, and that's for their contact tracing.
Yeah.
So I recommend to my clients now, make sure that you do that before you leave the property, the resort property, because you're going to have better Wi-Fi there. And as long as it's got that date and you can prove to the airline and the TSA personnel that you have completed that form that day that you're flying out of the country, you're fine. So that was really the only thing different coming out of Cancun that you would not expect and could catch off guard. It won't prove impossible for you to do, but it delayed us getting through the check-in process.
Yeah, it definitely sounds more like it would be more convenient to just take care of it at the hotel.
Yeah, and then you've got it on your phone and you just scan across your phone so they can see the picture of it. They're not, I can honestly say they weren't paying a whole lot of attention, but they were looking for it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any other tips or advice that you want to share?
Well, the biggest tip is even if you, before you book, you're looking at the protocols for the resort, the airline, the destination, keep checking because they are constantly changing. When we went to Jamaica, we weren't required to have a COVID test. Now you are. And you have to keep up with it. It's not set in stone. It can change on a dime. So keep up to date. And if you book with a travel advisor, they're going to be on top of it too. So
Sure.
that would be my biggest tip for traveling now. Also, pack your patience. You got to be flexible. Maybe you can't get the COVID test, and all of a sudden you got to switch destinations. So make sure that you got some flexibility built in there, and you don't get caught asleep at the wheel right before you arrive for airport check-in because you don't want to miss your flight, miss your vacation. But should definitely get out there and get exploring.
Yeah, that's very true. And a lot of people are anxious to do that. And it's great that these destinations are ready to receive visitors and vacationers. And I know as time we go through the fall and everything, other destinations will also become available and people are ready to go. So,
and it's not healthy to stay at home.
Yes.
Especially for a travel advisor. It's not normal for us to be at home for 5 months straight.
Very true. Very true. Well, Jennifer, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, Jennifer, thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and tips, advice, and all of that. We really appreciate that. And do you have one last question? Do you have another trip scheduled?
I actually do.
Oh, okay.
In a week, I will be leaving on a Colorado Rockies tour with Colette, and I might be doing some live reporting for them on the tour. Yesterday, if I would blog and report for Colette.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going by myself with me, myself, and my favorite travel partners.
Well, I'll have to follow up with you when you get back from that trip. Everything I want to hear about it. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I love the escorted tour, so it's to be interesting to see how it's different from the last time I traveled with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate it, and happy travels and enjoy Colorado.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.